Welcome to the Fitness Solution. It's been a while. Thank you for being here. I have a very new but very dear friend of mine on the other end of the phone, and she was gorgeous enough to let me appear on her amazing podcast, which is called Dumbbells and Donuts. And it was only fair that I got her to come on here to talk to you as well, because she's just amazing, full of life, got a great smile, and you're going to love listening to her story and what she's about and how she helps people. And her name is Brooke Madigan. Hello, Brooke. How are you?
Hi, Adam. Thank you for having me on. I am super excited to be here. And thank you for coming on to my podcast. It was a freaking awesome episode. I absolutely enjoy every conversation we have, whether it's in the depths of the Instagram DMs or whether it's on a Zoom call from across the world.
Literally, because I mean, like, yeah, I'm in Australia, so it's things have changed a little bit. But happy, you're the first guest of 2021. What an honor! Onto the Fitness Solution. Happy New Year! Did you celebrate well?
Yes, we celebrated very much at home.
Good. Do you know how I celebrated?
How was that?
In my double bed, in my hotel room, watching telly all night. That was about it. I think I fell asleep at 10 o'clock and had to wake up again at about 10 to 12 to quickly talk to my fiance. And then I fell asleep again. I mean, it was a wild New Year's Eve party.
That sounds like it. But you know what? At least you didn't have a hangover.
No, I did. I had jet lag. It was worse.
Yeah, that seems much worse than a hangover. Yeah, we just me, my fiance, and my little guy, we just watched the last bit of Christmas movies and hung out on the couch, had some pizza, and debated whether or not pineapple belongs on it or not.
I was literally about to ask you that. Pineapple definitely belongs on a pizza, and I will not have anyone. I was going to say, I will not have anyone on my podcast who says otherwise. So,
sweet and salty, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, I'll leave that there. I won't take that any further. Right. Well, Brooke, welcome, Brooke. So look, I mean, tell us where you're from. Tell us how you got there. Tell us what you do. Let's just go like we always do. Let's have a chat, and I'm sure great things are going to come of it.
All right. Well, I was born and raised in the United States. I'm in Washington State, which they call the Pacific Northwest. So if anybody knows where Seattle is, like the rainiest place in the world, that's where I'm from.
The home of Starbucks.
The home of Starbucks. And Starbucks is, I'm just saying this so everybody knows, just so we're clear, Starbucks coffee is 10 times better than Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Every year, my fiance, his family's in Ohio, so they're across the country. And his uncle and I always have this disagreement that Dunkin' Donuts is better than Starbucks. And I'm like, there's no way. I mean, it's just, no, it doesn't compare. And I know people will disagree, but I know I'm right. So
that's all that matters. Do you think that's because you're a Seattle homegirl, though?
Yes and no. So there are other local coffee places here that I actually prefer over Starbucks.
Whoa.
Yeah,
they're going to throw you out the state. They're going to throw you out the state if you carry on like that.
They might, but we do have quite the repertoire of coffee here. So we have these things called coffee stands where they're literally like little sheds with a window, and a person stands inside and you order your drink and they make you coffee. I used to work in one, actually.
Lovely.
And most of those coffee stands have like independent roasters and things like that. So they actually taste way better than Starbucks. The only thing I like about Starbucks is that no matter where in the world you go, your order is always the same.
Right. Which is both lovely and also a little bit terrifying. Because like, what's the point in traveling the world and not experiencing different things? Is how I feel about it. But here in Australia, not that I've been able to get out and experience what it's like in Australia yet. I mean, I did a couple of years back, but here in Australia, it takes about 20 minutes to get a coffee. Like, it's not this 30 seconds and out thing. Like, you'll order your coffee and then you just wait, and you wait an absurd amount of time. But when you get it, like, it's a work of art. Like, I genuinely think baristas in Australia genuinely think that making a coffee is the equivalent to painting the Sistine Chapel. and they give it as much time and attention as it requires. And most Aussies can't stand the British coffee. British coffee is very poor compared to Aussie and New Zealand coffee. So and in fairness, I haven't seen a Starbucks in Oz, but I can only see about 15 buildings from my hotel window. So I'll try a Starbucks. I'll try an Aussie Starbucks, and I'll let you know if I think it's the same.
I love it. And you know what? Those are my people. People that think it's a work of art. They are my people.
Yeah,
I can
make
respect it.
One if you're listening to this, if you've never baristaed a cup of coffee in your life, like foamed the milk, watched the espresso hit the cup, and just let like the velvetiness and it's one of the most soothing, most pleasurable things I think a human being can do is froth some milk and put it on top of a coffee and then drink it. Like, I don't know what it is. I find it so cathartic. I absolutely adore doing it.
It's the entire experience to making it, to drinking it. It's
Yeah.
magical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're from Seattle. Well, that was a tangent, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I like to take the long way around sometimes.
So what do you do? How'd you get here?
So I was born and raised in Seattle, and it's the only place I've ever lived. Well, I live in Everett, so I actually live like 45 minutes north of Seattle. Okay. But if you say that, nobody knows where you're from. So, I've always lived in this area. I was a barista for a while. I did some serving stuff, like waitress stuff at a pizza place. And then I worked with children for quite some time. I was a director at a Boys and Girls Club for, I want to say 6 years. And I decided to go to school and to be an elementary school teacher.
Wow.
And through my first real semester of community college, I ended up getting pregnant with my son.
Oh,
so
how amazing.
Plot twist. Yeah, plot twist. And then after having him, I decided shortly after, I went through my own struggles with body image, with binge eating, and just looking at my son and knowing that I needed to be a healthier version of myself in order to be a better mother to him. And I decided that's it. I am going to be a personal trainer, and I'm going to change my life and everyone else's. And there's been some kind of twists and turns along the way, but I'm here, and I am an online and in-person fitness coach, and I like to help people get towards their goals.
A very noble trade it is too, if I do say so myself. I love that. Like I like the first, I can't remember. It's funny, isn't it? I can't ever. I can never remember. Speak, Adam. Come on, get words out. I can never remember like how I first come across someone, but I always love the fact that I almost like the fact that I don't know how I came across someone. What I like is the fact that there's somehow you jumped out to me, and somehow that made me want to talk to you and connect with you. And I know like we connected through we're part of the same kind of mentorship group and stuff. But you know, there's plenty of people in there, but you jumped out to me for a very particular reason. And that clearly is part of your power in what you do. And when it came to, it all made sense to me why that happened to me when I listened to your introductory episode to Donuts and Dumbbells, your podcast, and you started talking about your story so eloquently, so well, so in-depthly, and so honestly, and it was incredible. And it made me think like I haven't done one of those for my podcast, and I probably should. So tell us about sort of all what you went through. Like you went through massive binge eating issues, didn't you? You went through an awful diet, and you're now kind of out on the other side, which is a tale that I know people who are listening to this will definitely be able to relate to and will definitely want to hear more on. Not because they want to become personal trainers at the end of it, but it's just nice to know that we all struggle with these things all of the time, and that it's perfectly understandable and reasonable. And I'm really interested to find out like how you really weaved your way out of that situation, because that's where I find a lot of people are. They'll come to me and they'll get involved in fitness, and they know they have these kind of eating disorder issues sometimes, whether that's binge eating disorder, whether it's anorexia, bulimia, whether it's orthorexia or whatever it might be. But they can't weave their way out of it. And it's that very narrow line they have to kind of figure out and kind of what's the word, kind of duck, dive, climb, understand and respect and kind of get out onto the other side. Like they know the light is at the end of the tunnel, but getting through that tunnel is really difficult. And that's, I really want to find out about how you walk through that tunnel.
The best way that I can explain the experience, first and foremost, I have to preface it with the only way out is through.
Right.
Even if that means clawing your way out of it. Like, I love that you put it in perspective of you duck and you dive and you, oh gosh, I'm going to quote dodgeball here. You duck, dive,
Wait, I'm all for that. Dodgeball. If we can't take philosophical lessons from dodgeball, what are we even doing in this world?
Agreed. If you can't dodge a wrench, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
Yeah, right.
In this case, we're talking about binge eating, but that's okay.
Doesn't matter.
But yeah, so the only way out is through. And the way that I really kind of had to claw my way out of it was to get through it. And the way that I did that was, I guess I'll go back to the beginning. I was 20 years old and I was in school to be an elementary school teacher while working with this job as a kindergarten director at a boys and girls club. So I was around a bunch of kids. I love them. I wanted to teach them. So I went to college. And when I was doing that, I was working two jobs. So I was doing that and working retail. And there was this McDonald's in the parking lot of the outlet mall that I worked at. So I was working these two jobs. And so most days I would work in the morning, stop at McDonald's, go to the other job. And I remember my McDonald's order by heart to this day. I would get it every day without fail. And I couldn't understand like why I kept on gaining weight. Like I would eat this big McDonald's order and then I'd maybe have a vegetable. And then I was like, what's going on? Why am I not losing weight? So I had to realize through therapy. So first of all, if anyone listening, if you suspect that you have an eating disorder, absolutely seek help. Like absolutely see a therapist and see a doctor.
I was going to say, can I say, and don't try and seek help from personal trainers. Okay. Like
Yes.
I get a lot of this, especially like now on TikTok and stuff. There's a lot of eating disorder on there. Like a lot of people looking for help on there and stuff like that. And I suppose it's my own fault, like because I do posts about it and I do try and offer my best advice on it and stuff. But then when someone like comes into the comments and is like, "Oh, are you doing like, I need this help, I need that help, I need this, that, and the other." I'm like, the first thing I'll always say to them is, "You've got to go and see a professional." It's like the thing is very good professionals in this field. The problem that people have is they're either very expensive or they're fully booked. And even though like dealing with eating disorders and stuff is well beyond the scope of a personal trainer, many personal trainers have gone through something like that and they can only offer their own subjective advice, which can be useful, but it's not necessarily going to be it's not going to be the blueprint for you to help sort out whatever it is you're dealing with yourself. Like you do need to seek out professional help. I know there's loads of great charities in the UK that deal with it. The one I always talk about is Beat, beat.co.uk, or it might be .org.uk. So if you're in the UK listening to this, then seek that out. I'm sure there's loads in the US as well. But yeah, like go see a therapist, go see a doctor, talk professionally to people medically. And the last thing you want to do is probably talk to a personal trainer and say you need to lose weight because you have an eating disorder, because they're going to put you on a calorie deficit and they're going to kind of probably misunderstand it and it might not be the best foot forward for you. That is something you can do further down the road. That is something you can totally do once you've gone through therapy and once you've got a grip on it all and everything. Like a year down the road, there's no rush for that, because what's most important is that you fix the issue that is really prevalent right now. Sorry, I just really had to say that.
No, that's very important. That's why first and foremost, I wanted to just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
Is that I definitely went through it, and don't get me wrong, even to this day I have those moments that I want to lean on food for comfort, but
yeah, but we all do.
because of therapy. Oh yeah. Well, and because of therapy, like I've found different ways to do that doesn't involve food. So back to kind of how I got into fitness and how I initially started getting deeper into this rabbit hole of binge eating was I ended up going to school, and I had a lot on my plate. And shortly after, I want to say, gosh, it was 2009. So shortly after graduating high school, working this job as a director, and I was the youngest person in that position as well. So a lot of pressure. Unfortunately, my dad passed away. Now, my dad was a type 1 juvenile diabetic, meaning he was insulin dependent from a very, very early age. So that's not to confuse for our listeners, that's not to confuse it with type 2 diabetes. My dad was actually severely underweight and had difficulty managing his condition. So he ended up losing both legs. He ended up having a quadruple bypass heart surgery. So growing up, multiple strokes, kidney dialysis. So growing up, we didn't have like this good or positive version of health. Like what we knew about health was that it can go either north or south, and his typically went south. So I decided to try this diet. And this diet was called the HCG diet.
Yeah, what is that? I've never heard of it, but I've heard since I heard you talk about it, I've heard a lot of people talking about it. So what is it?
So the HCG diet was a diet that I actually was put on by my, at the time, naturopathic doctor.
Right.
So what it was essentially in my case, because there are a few different variations of this diet. There are drops, there are pills, and then there are hormone injections.
Wait. Sorry. How can we attach the word diet to something that is based around pills, drops, and hormone injections? That is not a diet. That is a cocktail of medication.
Oh yes. and I think that, well, that I think is a whole separate issue with what the industry sells us.
That's a public health issue. That we can't fix that here. But yeah, no, carry on.
Yeah. And so I had a naturopathic doctor that I went to see, and my mom had seen her, and my mom had started to see her. My mom went on this diet. She lost like 60 pounds very, very quickly. I want to say for my mom, who was overweight, she lost that in maybe 30 days. Right. So 2 pounds a day for 30 days. And I was not happy with the way I looked. And my mom encouraged me to go see this doctor. I went and saw her, did the first round, lost 45 pounds, or 60 pounds, actually, I think. 45 pounds in 60 days, excuse me.
Jesus.
Yeah, and it's insane. And the way that I was told that it worked, and I still don't really even know to this day. Well, now I know that I was just starving. But the way that it was presented in this cute little gift box with this bow, with this little needle inside, was, hey, this is going to be the solution to your problem. These are pregnancy hormones that women get after they have a baby. They get these hormones that make them lose their pregnancy weight when you're breastfeeding. And so I don't even know there's a long word for it. It's like human something, some opposite of human growth hormone or something like that. But my naturopath said, what you're going to do is you're going to take one of these syringes every single day for 30 days. And this is a list of foods that you can eat. So the list of foods that you can eat are way shorter than the list of foods you cannot eat. And the diet is based off of 500 calories per day.
Right. So you have to eat 500 calories a day, and you have to inject yourself with what basically sounds like to me an awful drug. And that's gonna, I can't get my head around it. Like if anyone, like not on you, because, and this is the problem, like, because and this is a problem a lot of people find when they come to our industry and they look for help like this and stuff, is people are in a very desperate position, and people feel very like they need the fix now, and people in our industry are very good at exploiting that. Like if someone presents you with a pill, or if someone presents you with a syringe or something like that, like, to me, and because to me that's a massive red flag, because I'm in the privileged position of not being desperate, right? So even it, like the analogy that springs to mind is like if I wanted to really build muscle, like obviously a good way to do that would be to get an injection, right, and fuel myself with steroids. But I've never felt that desperate in my life to ever feel the need to have to inject myself with something like that. Um, and I'm very lucky in that sense. So if you are listening to this and you do feel like you're in a very desperate place, like you have to be very careful about who you're talking to, where you're going, or what people are saying to you. Like there's a company here, I think you have it in the US as well, called like Juice Plus, and they basically
Yeah.
prey on
Oh
desperate
yeah.
people and sell them freaking pills, sell them pills of vegetables and fruits, powdered fruits. It's like a pill is not a diet. A pill is never a diet, okay? And it should never be treated as thus. Um, and yeah, so it sounds like to me they were just completely not exploiting your desperation.
Oh, absolutely. And I didn't think that there was anything wrong with it because it was my doctor. This was the same person.
And you were desperate, yeah.
Yeah, the same person that was taking my blood pressure, the same person that was checking my heartbeat, the same person that was, making sure that I was healthy all the way around. And I'm thinking, oh, well, my doctor has the best interest for me.
Yeah.
So, of course,
If
I'm going to
only.
trust her.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, my mom was a patient of hers. So, my
Mm.
mom was a patient of hers. And the fact that you bring up the desperation is it's so true because I was desperate not to end up like my dad. I was
Yeah.
like, there is no way that I'm going to I'm going to leave this world at 42 years old. Like there's no way because my dad was 42 when he passed away. Super,
Oh,
super, super young.
heartbreaking.
And so it for me that's exactly what it was desperation. And I love my mom dearly. I hope she listens to your podcast, but if she does,
She
like
better. She better. She
no
better.
offense, mom.
Hey,
I
Mrs. Madigan, how are you?
she's a Mrs. Baird now, but
Okay. Hey, Mrs.
she
Baird, how are you? Your daughter's amazing, by the way.
thanks, mom. But she, in all fairness, like my mom had always struggled with her weight. So growing up, if mom was on a diet, that's when we were eating vegetables. If mom was trying to be healthier, then we had to be healthier. And if we had food in the house that was quote unquote junk food or food that hyper palatable tasty foods, whether it's cookies, whether it's ice cream or soda, like that shit was gone. Oh, sorry.
That's right. It's fine. You can swear.
Oh, okay. I
Fuck
was
it.
like,
Don't
oh
worry
wait.
about it.
Like that was gone. Like we would eat that up because we never knew when we would have it again.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people go down that rabbit hole. And I'll explain, like, I did this HCG diet, right? I ended up losing 60 pounds in 45 days, and it still wasn't enough. And it wasn't enough because I wasn't happy with myself. And it wasn't until I did years of therapy that I realized, oh, I have some self-esteem and self-worth issues revolving people pleasing. That's weird. Um, so what it ended up doing for me was it ended up making me have an even worse relationship with food than I already had from just the years of witnessing what binge eating and what disordered eating looked like just from a little kid watching their mom.
What I find really interesting about that is like the story of your childhood in the sense that like one, like your mom was clearly doing the best she could for a kid. Like that's just like there's no blame attached there at all. And but also like in my head, like it sounds like to me like your binge eating wasn't like it wasn't isolated into like certain meals. It'd be isolated like maybe across periods of months where suddenly there'd be an abundance of kind of processed foods and stuff like that, and you'd over like the process of a few months you'd gorge on it, you'd enjoy it and everything because you knew that there's going to come a point when your mom's going to think, okay, I need to sort it out again, and she's going to button down the hatches and then only buy vegetables for you. And what I find really interesting about that is like the feast and famine mindset. I think when we talk about binge eating issues and things like this, is like we always, and I do as well, but I've only just thought of it, hence I'm rabbiting on. It's like I've only ever imagined it in the context of a single meal, maybe a single day. I've only ever imagined it like, okay, so you try and restrict a little bit, and then you'll you'll then go and eat a massive bag of M&Ms of an evening, and you'll feel bad about it, and you'll just keep that cycle going, sort of maybe 3 times a week or something, and that's your issue. But it's interesting how like this can be something that happens in blocks of months. Like, like we just come out of Christmas, and Christmas, like I say to all my clients, kind of fun. Like, if you're not overeating at Christmas, are you even doing Christmas properly, right? Because because I don't want them to then think about I don't want them to feel like, because one, it's pointless trying to get them to restrict themselves over Christmas because they're not going to be able to. So I don't want them to feel like failures. Two, I don't care, they can get back on track whenever they want to. And three, like, but Christmas is traditionally a massive block of time where we know we're going to overeat. And then what will follow that up with, because we've done that, is a big period of famine. Right? So January, it'll be like New Year's resolutions, let's faminize. And then you'll be like, I need to get back on track. I need to lose those Christmas pounds and all this crap. And that is like every year, I bet millions of people in the world go through this bigger, greater, wider context of something very similar to a binge eating disorder. And you have to be aware, are you going through 3 months of over restriction, 3 months of over flexibility, 3 months of over restriction, 3 months of over flexibility? That in and of itself could be an issue, like a form of disordered eating. Just because it's happening over months doesn't mean it makes it invalid.
Absolutely. And those are like what I like to tell people, like those are more disordered habits as well. When you purge your pantry, like when you go into your house and
Like
you
that.
get rid of all of the unhealthy, I'm doing quote unquotes for our listeners, like unhealthy foods, and you're like, today is the day I'm going to be healthier. Like, what's healthier though? In me, like the question I finally had to ask myself, and this is kind of fast forwarding through all the other stuff that I'll get back to, but like you have to come to a point where you ask yourself, is my mental health included in healthy? And it absolutely is. Like, you can have the best diet and the best workout program and the best motivational podcasts and speaking events that you go to, but like if your mental health is struggling, you're never going to be able to move past that. And so you're always going to be stuck in that, is there really a way out? And so the only way out is through that. And the way to get through that is, of course, like going to therapy and also recognizing and owning that behavior and saying, you know what, is this healthy? Is my mental health being affected? How am I feeling about myself? Are there any underlying issues that I'm not dealing with that's leading to this pattern? And what's funny is you're absolutely right in the sense that, like, for us, we also grew up with not a lot of money.
Yeah.
I actually grew up in a double wide trailer in a very, very small town. And so we also didn't have a lot of money. I mean, my dad also was a drug addict. So my mom didn't really get child support. So she was raising 3 children on her own, working 14-hour days. So when we had food, a lot of it was canned, frozen, things like that. And so and then we would get those treats. And like you had said, it was almost that desperation of, we need to eat all of this because we don't know when we're going to have it again.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we used to do when we were young kids that also led to this this kind of disordered eating for my own self was, we used to, when my grandparents would pick us up to go see our dad, we would go to a buffet every Friday. And all you can eat. And the rule is eat as much as you could because you're not eating until the morning. So we, like, my little brother would literally have like eating competitions with my grandpa. And I would eat as much, like, I would literally like wear elastic waistband pants because I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be buttoning my jeans after this. Like, we were actually like encouraged to binge eat. And I know that that's not what the adults in my life that were, putting us in those situations, I know that wasn't their intent, but through therapy, looking back, it's like, wow, that was not healthy. When in reality, it was their way of being able to binge by saying, well, we're all doing it together, so it must be okay.
Yeah.
So that leads to my last my last story of kind of how binge eating was a part of my life. And my grandparents would take me, and I have a younger brother and a younger sister, and then an older half sister. But my younger brother and sister and myself, my grandparents would take us on vacation every year. And we had this bag, and you're going to laugh. You're not going to believe this. It was called treat bag.
A treat bag. Yeah.
Treat bag. So before vacation, my grandparents would go to the store with us, and we could all pick out our favorite candy. It didn't matter what it
What it
was, our
was.
favorite treat, and we would pick it out. Now, the rules of treat bag were you had to be good during the day when you're out doing activities so you can get treat bag. Now, once we had treat bag, the second rule was you can eat as much as you want as long as you don't complain that your stomach hurts and that you don't puke.
Okay.
It's so fucked up, right? But
it is. Look, it is fucked up in terms of like just the sheer craziness of the absurdity of what it is, right? But like when I think about stories like this, and like my upbringing was similar. Like we had Sweetie Day when like once a week, like on the way home from school, my mom would stop at a local newsagent's and we'd get pick a mix and we'd get a pound, like £1, and we'd be allowed to have as much sweets as we could for that pound, and that was our Sweetie Day once a week. And and that was like a form of like we'd binge on sweets for that day, like for the evening. And then I remember my parents went on holiday. It was their 25th wedding anniversary, and they went to New York to celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary. And I got to go and stay at my aunt and uncle's. Now, see, I never grew up with grandparents, so I never had that kind of relationship in my life of kind of like being treated like that from like people who can hand kids back. Do you know what I mean? There's something very special about a
yeah.
grandparent. I've never had that in my life. And so but the people who were kind of like my grandparents were my uncle and my auntie Jan, Uncle Les, who are fantastic people. And so I went to stay with them for a week, and it was the best week in my life because they bought me like we were never allowed Walker's crisps at home. Like Walker's are like they're like say it's like Doritos, yeah. Like we was never allowed labeled. Like I'd call them designer crisps. We was never allowed those at home. We'd always have like the supermarket own brand, just because affordability or whatever. Not that we was poor, but you have budgets to stick to and stuff like that. And so or like I'd be able to get Cocoa Pops as opposed to the supermarket's own version of chocolate Rice Krispies and stuff like that. And I'd be with my aunt and uncle, and they just bought me everything I wanted this week. And then they also had Sky Sports, so I could watch wrestling all week. So it's WWE. It was any crisps I wanted. It was any cereals I wanted, and anything else. Like if I said I wanted it, they bought it for me that week, and I got to eat it. It was 1 week of my life. It was amazing. And the thing is like you can look back on these things, and that was a one-off instance in my life. With you when it was happening more regularly, I can appreciate how it has a much bigger effect on you. And I can remember that in my head so clearly. And if that happened more than once in my life, I would probably come to normalize that a lot more as opposed to have it separate as a one-off. But these grandparents and these older figures in our lives, they do it out of so much love, and they do it out of so much kindness, and they do it out of wanting to spoil you and wanting to um, just love you. Like, and they don't. It's like it's really hard to sit here, and I think it is to sit here and go, hey, it was really fucked up, and it was really not a good thing to do, which it wasn't. But they were only doing it from such a loving place, and that's what makes it such a conflict.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's also, I mean, as I grew and, knowing them as well, like it's not only out of love, but it's also sometimes to reap a reward themselves, because
Yeah,
my mom has a history of binge eating as well. So sometimes when you're like, oh well, we're doing this as a family, it's a little bit more normal to be like, yeah, no, this makes sense, we're doing it together, like,
yeah,
okay, yeah, this is normal. And like you said, like normalizing it, definitely, like having it there as a part of my life growing up, super super normal. So what ended up happening is, we had this treat bag, we had all these things, I did this HCG diet, and every day on the HCG diet, I remember, oh my God, I can't wait for this diet to be over. I cannot wait to have A, B, C, D, and E. Like actually, like one of the first foods that I ate was literally garlic mashed potatoes because I love
I've
potatoes.
never had that. That sounds amazing.
Oh
I
my
mean, but
God.
that's a sign of
Oh,
a diet failing you, isn't it? When all you can think about is what you're going to have when it's over.
exactly. And that's why, like, when you put a name to a diet, that's when the waters start to get a little rough. You know, you take things like the paleo diet or the ketogenic diet, any diet with a name where there are quote unquote rules, or I like to use the term guidelines instead when I talk with my own clients about,
You know
you know,
what?
flexible dieting.
Whenever I hear that, all I think about is Pirates of the Caribbean, and Jeffrey Rush on that going, "There are more guidelines, really."
It does make me think of that. Now I'm gonna
The
think
most
about that
amazing quote
every
there is.
time.
Yeah, yeah. You have to do it. You have to do it in a pirate voice. All right. The rules of parlay. It's not the rules of parlay. They're not rules. They're more guidelines, really. And that's all I'd say to a client. They'll never forget it.
We'll see, and now I'm not gonna forget. I need to work on my pirate voice now.
Oh,
Great.
come
Thanks,
on, let's hear it.
Adam.
Let's hear the pirate voice. Yeah,
Oh
you're
God.
you're you're on a podcast with an actor. Let's go.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if I can do it.
Just go.
I've
Arr.
never. Arr.
There you go. You're a pirate.
Woohoo. Oh, I love it. But yeah, so for me, having these rules wrapped around food, doing crazy shit to lose weight. Like, I remember an ex-boyfriend of mine, his sister gave me advice on how to lose weight. And what that advice was eat in front of a mirror.
What?
Yeah, literally to make yourself look at yourself while you eat to
Oh,
create shame to get you to stop eating.
that is not a good
Like,
idea.
no,
That is not a
and I
good
did
idea.
it. Of course, like at
What
the
was your
time, I
experience?
did it.
How did it make you feel?
Oh, it made me feel awful. Like it made me feel self-conscious. It made me feel like I was doing something
God.
wrong when I
Yeah.
wasn't. Like I would be eating chicken breast and broccoli and feel like I was doing something wrong. Like it was horrendous.
What
And
messed up
to
advice.
any and you know what I realized is all of this advice that people were giving me that was either not accurate, whether it was just flat out irresponsible, or whether it was, like, you know, the intention was good, but the delivery was bad. What I realize is we receive this every single day on social media. We receive this every single day from people that are the new health guru or influencer that and everybody that tries to make the whole fitness and nutrition industry complicated. We realize like it's really not complicated when you start to look at it from an objective standpoint, which, you know, again, that's what therapy helped me with. But it made me feel absolutely horrible. And what I think a lot of people, which I know on my podcast, I think we touched on it a little bit. There is a lot of shame wrapped up around people's weights and wrapped up around our appearance. And the craziest part I think about my story was I was never really that overweight. I mean, I was overweight at one point. I mean, I'm 5'8". I was like about 196 pounds. I was definitely overweight, but I wasn't obese. And there's nothing wrong with that anyway if you're seeking professional help from a doctor. But the biggest thing that I realized was I was so body dysmorphic. And really, like, I've even had people after hearing my very first episode of my podcast say, I never thought of you as overweight. I never thought of you as heavy. I like that. That just never occurred to me. And I had no idea you felt that way. And a lot of it just comes from these years of what society taught me, especially like, you know, here in America, it is very different from the rest of the world. Very
Yeah.
different. And
What you say is there's so much to come back to. Like when you was talking about mental health, and it ties into what you just said as well. About, you know, like I genuinely think mental, like if your mental health isn't, I kind of imagine it kind of flushes down. So like if your head's in the right space, then the body will more than likely follow. I'm not going to say it will follow, more than likely follow. Okay. Like it kind of imagine like you're under a waterfall, like it's gonna, if you, and then that will sprinkle down and it will have a good effect within your body. I won't say it will fix all of your problems or your health issues or anything like that if you get your mental health in the right place, but it definitely has a massive effect. When we was acting, or when I was acting, when I was at drama school and stuff, we were always taught, the only thing we was ever taught about just how to perform basically was like three words. It was mind, body, and space. And what that means is in order to get your mind into the correct place to become another character, to become another person, you have there's three aspects. You have to get your body in the right place for that character. So I don't know, say you're playing a soldier, you have to start moving and behaving like a soldier, and then that will have an impact on the way you think. Yeah, the way you hold your body and the way you move your body and the way the things you do with your body affects your thoughts, and then the way you think affects your body, right? So the two talk to each other. Like it, and it's so true. Like if I said to you, I'll tell you what, there's a really famous story of a guy called Michael Chekhov. Now you might have heard of Anton Chekhov, you might not have, who's a very famous Russian playwright. He was basically the founder of realism. So what we see now on TV, what we see now on a lot of stage, like not West End stage or like Broadway stage, but kind of like just normal sort of plays where people are just kind of talking to each other and just kind of you're watching everyday life. He was the founder of that, and he worked on that with a guy called Konstantin Stanislavski. And his nephew is a guy called Michael Chekhov, who became a very, very, very influential acting coach. And he said that one day, there's a story in his book, that he was playing pool with one of his friends and he was missing every shot, like really bad, playing like billiards, like really, really, really not doing well. And he was quite a good pool player and he couldn't figure out what was going on. And he was about to quit. And he walked out and he said, "Look, mate, just let me go to the toilet. I'll come back in sort of 5 minutes." And he went to the toilet. Apparently, he just looked at himself in the mirror and he just started to think about what professional pool players look like, how they behave, how they hold themselves, how they walk, how they talk, how they act. And then he came back and his game was transformed and he sunk everything. And he was constantly, like he went from having the worst day of his like playing pool to having the best day of playing pool, literally from changing the way he thought about himself and changing the way he held his body. And then the other thing is, so you have mind, you have body, then you have space. And in fitness, we talk about environment a lot. We talk about, you have to fix your environment. You can't heal in the same environment that made you sick and all of this, right? And it's true. Like if your space, if your environment, if you're reading things like Women's Health, or if you're watching Dr. Oz, or the idiot we were talking about earlier, Michael Mosley, or if your space around you isn't a space that is helping you with your mind and with your body, then you're never going to conquer these three things. And all of those three things, they're so entwined, and they're what make up the human condition so delicately. And if one goes out of balance, the other will go out of balance, and then the other. But the good news is you can shift and change, and you can find it. Or it's like you have to keep the plates in the air. And it's really interesting that your body plays into your mental health. Your mental health plays into your body, but also your space and your environment play into both as well. And you have to constantly think about all three things. If you're not working on all three things, then you're going to find it so much more difficult, because one thing is going to be out of balance and it's going to knock you out. It's not going to allow you to succeed in the other two, because you must have all three in place. And without mind, body, space, I can't walk onto stage. If I don't have the mind of the character, if I don't have the body of the character, if I don't have the environment of the character, I can't perform that character. And it's true in life as well.
That is actually the perfect way to describe it, because you are the sum of the 5 people you're closest to.
Yeah.
And and that is so true. I mean, some of the people that I'm closest to were, my mom, my grandma was a big part of my life. I had friends that were constantly trying to lose weight. I mean, everybody around me was doing it. So I thought that I was kind of guilty by association. And that was a really big eye opener for me, was to realize like, oh, it's not the diet that's not working for me. It's not the workout that's not working for me. It's not the foods that I eat on every, day that I would binge that's not working for me. It's everything that I was thinking about myself that wasn't working for me. And it wasn't until I ended up, I going back to my story a little bit of like, I ended up getting pregnant very young. I got pregnant at 21 years old in the middle of, getting my elementary education degree. And I dropped out of college. And the person that I was with at the time, my partner, was very not the best person for me. They were very critical of the way I looked as well. And I realized I was looking at my son, and the moment that I knew that I needed to make a change was I was sitting on the couch looking at this beautiful little 1-year-old boy that's playing on the floor. And I'm looking at him like, gosh, I am so tired. I don't want to get up and go play with them. I didn't want to peel myself off the couch to move to the floor that was a foot beneath me to play with him. And it wasn't even that I was tired because at that point I was the heaviest I'd ever been. I was tired because this is only the beginning. Like, this was only the beginning. I mean, my son was 1 years old. Like, what am I going to do when he's like now almost 8 years old, running around like his pants are on fire? And I'm sitting there like, gosh, am I going to be able to keep up? So I realized at that moment, like, I needed help. And so I went back to work because at the time I was a stay-at-home mom. I took a year off of work to stay home and raise my son. I had extremely horrible postpartum depression shortly after having my son, to where the binge eating became super out of control. And the way that I knew how to deal with emotions was to eat them. And so I ended up saying, that's it. I'm going to go back to work. I'm going to start exercising because a couple of my coworkers were exercising. I had no idea what I was doing. I was still terrified of the gym, but I went. I went anyway. And I would see the personal trainers and I'd be like, man, that must be it. Like,
That's what I used to
there.
think. I used to think, God,
Yeah.
they're like rock stars. What an
Yeah.
awesome job. I'd love to be a PT. Like, get paid to be fit and look good. How wrong was I?
For real. Like, I had no idea, like, at the time, like, how distorted that thought process was. And I
Right.
would I would watch and I'd talk to my grandma because my grandma, she would work out with her own personal trainer. And so she said, don't worry, let me talk to Julie. I'll see what the process is. So she recommended I go to this school called the National Personal Training Institute. And we had one here in Seattle.
Mm.
So I started the year-long program. Like, that day I started the year-long program. I registered, I quit smoking cigarettes. I got rid of all the bad food in my house, decided to go on a diet. And because I was embarrassed, I'm like, great, I'm going to go to this this personal training institute. I'm going to be the most overweight person there. I'm going to, be the least knowledgeable and whatnot, like all of these self-limiting beliefs, like all of the things that I used to think about myself, right? So what I ended up doing is I ended up like giving all of that up. I started learning, got into a car accident, had surgery, which put me out of commission from the gym. So that's when I really dove into the nutrition part, learned a lot about nutrition. And then this little thing developed that I'm sure as a coach, you understand, and I'm sure any coaches listening understand this little thing called imposter syndrome. Like, oh man, like, how do I deal with this? Like, I'm still learning and I still have these behaviors, but like, I shouldn't have these behaviors because I'm supposed to be helping people. Like, it's just garbage. The whole thing is just very difficult. So anyway, I ended up graduating from school at the top of my class. I took my certification, became a certified trainer, and actually started working for my grandma's trainer. And I started losing a bunch of weight, and I decided, you know what, like, I'm going to diet again. Like, even after becoming a personal trainer, I was still having these issues around dieting. And it wasn't until I realized that you have to look at the science. I kept being told you can't eat carbs. You can't eat fruit after this time. You can't eat fats because they made you fat. Like, and I'm sitting here wondering which is the right answer. So then I started looking up like evidence-based nutrition information. So precision nutrition was a lot of the information I looked on. Dr. Lane Norton.
Yep.
I read his Fat Loss Forever book. I started just really diving into what is the truth? Like, what is the truth? And I realized like it's calorie deficit. That's why the HCG diet worked for me. That's why the paleo diet worked for me. Like, well, quote unquote, worked at the time. I gained all the weight back every single time. So they didn't technically work. It wasn't until I took a step back, went to therapy, dealt with the issues relating to my own experiences that made me feel poorly about myself, and realized that the only way I'm going to change this is to change the way that I think about myself. And as a coach, that was a really hard thing to do when I was trying to tell other people how to eat and how to move and all of that stuff. And really the biggest thing that got me through the binge eating itself was going to therapy and actually being patient. It was actually saying, okay, if I'm going to do this the right way, there's no shortcuts. Because all the other shortcuts I tried to take ended up getting me to the long way anyway.
Yeah.
So
it's like I said the other day, I think it was on TikTok, if it was a shortcut, no, if the shortcut worked, it wouldn't be a shortcut. It'd be the status quo.
Yeah. And we wouldn't have the issues that we have in the fitness industry.
No.
And one thing that I did learn that was huge in like with Lane Norton, his book and all this stuff is like, in reality, like we don't have a weight loss problem. We have a weight regain problem.
Yeah.
We can lose weight, but it's like, if you do it in a way that's unsustainable, you're just going to gain it back. So let's just find the way to do it sustainably. And so when I work with clients, that's what a lot of my focus is on. I don't like to say flexible dieting, but I use flexible dieting as an example because, well, it's flexible.
Yeah.
But it is like 80% of your diet should be from nutritious sources, from, good high quality fruits, vegetables, lean proteins. I know on my podcast last time I said lean fruits. You can include those too. Editing that part was fun.
I'm still searching. I've come to Australia literally to find lean fruits.
Watermelon. No.
No, like I get it. Like it's the thing is, right? What you have to remember is only eating a diet of Mars bars is unhealthy. Only eating a diet of broccoli is unhealthy. And that's it. And once you can figure that out, once you can figure out only eating chicken and rice is unhealthy and only eating milkshakes is unhealthy, once you can see them both in the true light of day for what they both truly are, which are both unhealthy diets. Clean eating, one, has a name attached to it, therefore that's a red flag. Two, clean eating is unhealthy. Eating only sugar is unhealthy. Both are equally unhealthy. And once you can see them like that, once you can really and truly get your head around, shit, yeah, if I only eat apples, that's not good for me. If I only eat chips or McDonald's, that's not good for me either. I have to somehow find a convergence of the two, like a Venn diagram, and you need to be in that middle section. Then you're gonna find the holy grail that you're looking for.
And the example of a Venn diagram is perfect because that's exactly what it is. On one hand, you have this extreme, and then on the other hand, you have another extreme. And any diet that requires you to have an all or nothing mindset is not one that's going to be sustainable. And that's what I had to learn. That's what I had to say, ooh, okay, yeah, Brooke, you're going to have to find something that you can do for the rest of your life. Like, if you tell me that I can't have potatoes for the rest of my life, like, then I don't want it. Like,
it's like teaching. It's like, I found difficult recently is talking to my clients about like relaxing, like almost coming off of a calorie deficit for a month or two, just to refocus, just to find some energy, just to give yourself a break. Like telling them that is part of the process. That is what you're meant to do. You're not meant to be in a calorie deficit for the rest of your life. You're meant to, get some energy together. Well, I'm going to nail this for 3 months, and then I'm probably going to have 2 or 3 months off, and I'm going to go back to maintenance. I'm going to chill out a bit. I'm going to enjoy what that does for me, both in terms of my exercise and in terms of my mental strength and my fortitude. And then I'm going to get back onto it. And like, putting your foot, you can't go, if it's like, if you drive a car at 100 miles an hour everywhere all of the time, you're going to crash, you're going to destroy the car, and you're going to be in a very bad place, right? You have to know when to go at 30. You have to know when to go at 50. You have to know when to go at 60. You have to know when to go back to 30. And, you can't keep bouncing off the walls like this, like from one thing to another, because if you throw something at a wall enough, eventually it's going to break. And that's all you're doing to yourself, just bouncing around, constantly running into walls, and you're going to break. So, just go down the middle of the corridor, and it's a lot nicer.
And I like that you included maintenance, because for the people listening, the biggest thing that I think helped me with getting a handle on not just like the binge eating that I used to do, but also the mindset that I had, was I had to take a step back. And again, this is my personal experience. I had to take a step back and say, why do I want to keep losing weight? Like, why do I feel the need to constantly be in some sort of deficit? And it was that my mind was in a deficit. I wasn't seeing my life for what it was and what it needed to be for myself to be happy and healthy and a good mom for my son. I had to come to this realization that I don't want my son to grow up and be like, yeah, I always remember my mom being on a diet. I wanted him to think like, oh, my mom used to work out and lift heavy stuff, and she used to like to eat vegetables, but she also liked to eat pizza, and she also liked to eat donut. Like, I want him to reflect back and look and say, you know what, my mom was healthy and she was strong and she did the best she could. And what helped me really finally seek out therapy for the binge eating was I had to go into maintenance. I had to take a diet break, and I had to take a step back and say, listen, I need to not lose weight for a while, and I need to work on my mindset. And that's exactly what I did. And then about a year after getting into maintenance, that's when I found Jordan and Susan. And I'm like, oh my God, like, why am I learning this now?
I know.
Like,
I mean, the thing is with maintenance as well is it's magic, right? It's magical. And I hold my hands up. If you're one of my clients and you're listening to this, and or if you followed me for a long time, like, I call myself like a philosopher on the topic of a calorie deficit and things like this, right? And I've only recently, this last year, come to the realization of what maintenance is and how powerful it can be and the useful tool that it is, and how much we need to use it. But here's the kicker, right? You can eat at maintenance and still lose weight, right? You can eat at maintenance, and if you're working out 3 to 4 times a week, you're technically kind of still in a deficit, right? If you can attach the word maintenance literally to your intake, your caloric intake, then you're doing just fine. And you can attach that along with a very good training program and your fitness. You're still going to lose weight. Just because you're at maintenance doesn't mean you're not going to lose weight, because you're working. Your metabolism never ever stops. You can't pause your metabolism, so it's always going to be burning calories. So eat to maintenance, and then if you're still working out, chances are you're going to find what you're looking for and have energy, have flexibility, have a release from really restrictive dieting and really restrictive foods and stuff like that. And you're going to find more success in the magic of maintenance than the kind of restriction of a calorie deficit per se. Now, I don't mean that for everyone. Like, there's certain people that do have to go into calorie deficit, but it's all about balance, isn't it? It's about find your moments of when you want to do this and that. Find your moments when you need to come away from the calorie deficit. You need to come away from actively trying to lose weight, and understand that just because you're going into maintenance doesn't mean you're going to gain it all back again. You as long as you keep doing the things you've been doing in the deficit, increasing your calories, yeah, the weight loss might slow down, but you're still going to be losing weight more than likely if you're still training hard, working hard, eating enough protein, and doing all the things that anyone should really be talking about and talking to you about as you try and do these things.
Oh yeah, and with maintenance, like the biggest thing that I found, like when I went into it, was like I recompositioned, which
Yeah,
means that like my weight stayed the same. Yeah, I maintained my weight, but like my body looked drastically different.
yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, what kind of sorcery is this? And why did I not know about it sooner? Because that would have saved me years of heartache. But the cool thing is going into that maintenance and realizing like, oh, this is what I can do forever. And the only thing I need to do if I want to change my body is I can take away a little bit of calories or add a little bit of calories. Like,
Yeah.
you guys, it's that simple.
It's almost like
And
it's almost like don't learn a calorie deficit until you've learned maintenance. Because once you've learned where your
yes,
maintenance is, and once you've learned your diet at maintenance, then you can figure out where you can save the calories or where you can add the calories, depending on what you want to do. Like, you have to find the mid ground to then come down and then come above, as opposed to start on the lower ground floor and only try and climb from there. Like that's more difficult. You should definitely find where your body lives at, and I think the biggest issue a lot of people have is I think people think they constantly gain weight, right? Now, the truth of the matter is you are not constantly gaining weight throughout your life. People who have to have weight to lose, I think they think no matter what they do, they're just constantly gaining weight. And that's not true. Chances are you're more than likely aware of what your maintenance calories are, and all you're doing is eating at maintenance. That's just increased ever so slowly over a very, very long period of time. Um, you're not constantly gaining weight, and therefore you don't have to constantly try to lose weight. Your body will I would argue you're probably more than likely eating 80 to 90% of the time at maintenance for your life, except the other 5% over a 10-year period is what's led to the weight gain, because you only ever go over your calories. You very rarely come under your maintenance calories. And that's but it's that mindset, isn't it, of, oh, I'm always gaining weight. If I'm eating above my calorie deficit, I will always be gaining weight. And it's just not true.
yeah. And the biggest thing that I think was the real game changer for me was when it came to like the dieting mindset and the binge eating was I had never tracked my calories
Yeah.
until maybe 3 years ago. I never like I honestly thought that tracking calories, and this is a very cliche thing that goes around, like I'm sitting there thinking, well, tracking your calories is obsessive.
Mm,
Like tracking calories is obsessive. It's tedious. But like, I'm sorry, like not eating a food group isn't obsessive.
mm.
Like eat it like going to my own experience, like making myself eat in front of a mirror so I felt bad and wouldn't eat as much. Like that wasn't obsessive. Like,
But also, refusing to track your calories is a different
yeah.
kind of obsessive. You're being obsessively against it as opposed to obsessively for it.
Yeah, and it wasn't until like I finally sat down and my therapist, which is so funny because she is not a personal trainer. She actually asked my recommendation for another personal trainer because we just don't like too much personal stuff. So I
Yeah.
gave her a recommendation for a coach that I know and trust.
Thanks for
And
that. I
she
really
looked at
appreciate
me.
it.
she she ended up like looking at me and said, "Well, from what I understand, I did a Google search, and the way to lose weight is to be in a calorie deficit. So why don't you just track your calories?" And it never occurred. I was like, no, and believe it or not, when I was in personal training school, the teachers taught me like that calorie counting was obsessive. Don't teach your clients that. It was obsessive.
Right.
Come to find out, a lot of the programming and a lot of the education that we learned were their own personal bias, which was not cool. But
Not cool.
one thing that I realized was like, oh, okay. So that's when I found, I typed in literally calorie deficit on Instagram in the hashtags and I started to learn like, oh, this works. Like this is actual science. Like who'da thunk? And if I had just gone back and read the nutrition part of my textbook, I could have saved myself a lot of time.
Of
But
course.
what I realized is I didn't even give like tracking my calories a chance. It was like,
Mm.
nope, that requires more work than I'm willing to do, so I'm not going to do it. It requires more effort than eliminating potatoes than I want. And in reality, like that's really what helped me personally. Sorry, I thought my
That's
little
it, your
guy was
son.
peeking in here. I'm like, hey, Micah, what are you doing? Um, so what I finally realized and what actually helped me start to come out of that binge eating disordered pattern that I had was number one, seeing how it was affecting my son and my family. Because I would binge, I would wake up the next day feeling like I had a food hangover. I'd be pissed off. I'd be grumpy because the scale was 3 pounds up. I would be tearing myself down, grabbing my stomach, looking in the mirror, having my, at the time he was my boyfriend, now he's my fiance, looking at me being like, babe, you're fine. Like it's okay. Like keep moving. And I'd be like, shut up, I'm so fat. Like, even though I wasn't. And it finally like made me realize like, okay, this is affecting my family. This is affecting the way I feel about myself, because then I would be going and training clients and telling them to eat, like telling them like this is what you need to do. And at the time I worked at a gym where you had to coach them how the owners wanted you to coach them. So I was kind of given this little list of, okay, give
Yeah.
this to your clients. This is what they eat. This is what they do. So then I was going to the gym and doing this and then feeling like an imposter, because it's like, how am I supposed to help them if I can't help myself? And this was in the very beginning of my personal training career. So this was years ago, but it made me realize there is another way. Like there is another way. So I did exactly what my therapist recommended and I started tracking my calories. And I realized I was eating a lot of calories. So I found my maintenance. And then that's when I reduced my calories and started working. But what really solved the binge eating was realizing how it wasn't only affecting me, my family, but how I wasn't giving myself an honest or a fair shot when it
Yeah.
came to my health. I
Mhm.
wasn't being open-minded. I was all or nothing. And I honestly was just self-sabotaging. And I think a lot of people do that without really knowing what it looks like. And having that all or nothing, that like extreme mentality of perfection, that self-sabotaging and limiting belief is what really gets in a lot of people's way. I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people, including at times myself. So really going through therapy, understanding that there really is no quote unquote right way to do this. Even with a calorie deficit, some people have issues that are health related that they need external help, whether it's like a thyroid issue or a hormonal issue. There are circumstances. That's why it's just so important to find what works for you. And what worked for me was, you know, a real eye opener.
Yeah, and I think on that point, just as we come to a conclusion, because I've taken up far too much of your time, is it's what works for you is valid, and like you don't have to spend your life trying to lose weight. You don't have to spend your life trying to live in maintenance. You don't really have to spend your life doing anything other than anything that makes you feel good about yourself, other than anything that makes you feel happy and puts a smile on your face. And if that is literally not giving a shit about your calories, going to the gym and just moving and enjoying that, that is valid. Like you really what you need to do is you need to find what makes you feel healthy. And to some people, that could be having pizza 3 times a week and then going for 5 runs a week. That could be working out in the gym and strength training. Like what makes me feel really healthy is doing a very heavy overhead press. Hate the bench press, hate squatting, but you give me 35, 40 kilos and I lift that above my head, I feel strong, I feel healthy, right? And that to me, if all I did was that for 3, 4 times a week, I'd feel really good about myself because I love the feeling of getting a barbell above my head. Um, and that's okay. And and I'll go in and out of these phases. I'll go in and out of tracking calories, or I'll go in and out of eating better and eating worse because my rhythm, my life is dictated by what makes me feel healthy. And so it's such a personal thing for you, and unless you go and explore what that is for you, then you're always going to struggle, because you're always taking on other people's ideas of what it is for you. And you're never going to solve it until you truly know what makes you feel good about yourself.
And you're right. And one thing that I will say with binge eating that I experience, and that what I've experienced through clients of mine and other people, and what I've learned is, when it comes to binge eating, the biggest thing that I feel like is hides in this dark corner that people don't think of your mind, that where the biggest thing that I hear is I start, and then I have no self-control. I have no self-control. It's the shame. Like that I think is what encompasses it. Is it's a problem that is so prevalent, that so many people struggle with, but it's not sexy. Like, it's not a sexy thing to talk about. It's not fun. It's not advertised, which it needs to be addressed, number one, again, by a professional, but also you need to think of the things that are going on in your life that bring you that shame. Is it you're in a relationship with somebody who doesn't treat you very well, and so you decide that you can't control that situation, but you can control what you put in your body, and at this moment what feels good is everything in the pantry. Like,
Yeah.
and then afterwards you feel this deep shame of, oh my God, I did something bad, when in reality you're just responding to a stressor in your life, and then you feel ashamed of it. So that is why, like, I ended up seeking help for therapy. That's why I always encourage people to do the same thing. And there's so much shame that encompasses binge eating. And so being able to combat that and finding ways, again, that work for you to develop a healthier relationship with food, that's the first and foremost thing I always recommend to people, is start by developing a healthier relationship with food. Start by going to therapy, developing that relationship, and then come up with creative problem solving to incorporate the foods that you enjoy into your life, so you can be not only happy but healthy in mind, body, and spirit.
Mind, body, and space. Mind, body, and spirit. I
Mind,
agree.
body, and space.
We got it all
Yeah.
there. I like mind, body, and spirit. I'll take that. And look, Brooke, as ever, I mean, I think that's a perfect note to finish it on. And as ever, thank you so much for your wonderful time and thoughts and everything. And I'm sure people who have listened to this have loved every second of it, because I've adored every second of it. Please tell the world where they can find out more about you.
Sorry, by the way, anybody, if you hear my dogs in the background,
I
they
was
are,
wondering if they were going to make an appearance today.
yeah, they're, oh gosh, yeah, they did on my podcast last time, huh? Where you can find me, I am on Instagram at Get You a Brooke with an E at the end. So GetYouBrooke. My website is functionaltotalfitness.com, or you can just go to Instagram and it's in my bio, and Facebook at Get You a Brooke. So that's all my platforms. And Adam, thank you so much for having me today. I know
Please.
my brain was a little all over the place. I didn't sleep well last night.
Sorry, I've been
So
up since 5 a.m. And I haven't had any breakfast or anything, so I'm sure my brain was
oh,
over the place as well. But hey, I like being in the moment. I like being creative. And Brooke, please, honestly, the pleasure was all mine. Absolutely, all mine as always. To have you on, to share your story, and I think it's been such a valuable chat. I can't thank you enough. And from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my listeners' hearts, thank you so much for coming on.
thanks, Adam. I appreciate you, my friend.
You too, my friend.